Hello, it's Film Frenzy, and I just got back from seeing an early screening of Shazam, the latest DC Extended Universe film. I'm very excited to talk about it today in my latest review, starting with my first category, direction and visuals. Overall, I do think that Shazam was a very well-directed and visually appealing film, though I think there are definitely some flaws, particularly in terms of that I feel like the visuals were very, very derivative of other films, particularly with other superhero films. For example, there's one big sequence where he saves his people on all the train, and I thought that was just been done so many times in superhero movies before. The most notable example, of course, is in Spider-Man 2, which is an amazing scene that was far superior to this. So, if a superhero movie doesn't want to be compared to far better superhero movies, and I'm not saying that Shazam is a bad movie by any means, Spider-Man 2 is just a classic, you should do a little bit more original action sequences. I think there was definitely some great visuals that were unique to the film, like the 7 deadly sins were like the monsters that Dr. Sivana was like housing in his body. I thought that was a really cool concept, and it was really just brought to life excellently. I really love the CGI, and for a movie with only $100 million budget, which is a lot of money, but not a ton for a big time superhero film, I thought that they did a great job with the visuals. The CGI really did all look fantastic, and no, I wouldn't say any of the action sequences are really going to stand the test of time and stand out like, say, a movie like Aquaman or Avengers Infinity War sequences do. They were still very visually captivating and really drew you in. So for this category, I'm still giving a really, really solid 4 out of 5. Up next is acting and character development. I want to start off this category by saying that I think the acting in Shazam was absolutely phenomenal. One of the strongest ensembles in recent years for superhero movies by far. That was really impressive to me. The casting was so great. Zachary Levi, I've read so many reviews, I completely agree that he was born to play this role as Shazam, like a 14-year-old boy in this man superhero's body. It's amazing. Asher Angel, who plays the kid version of Shazam, Billy Batson, he does a phenomenal job too. The actor that plays Freddy, who is his best friend basically, and another foster kid who's disabled and lives with him, I thought he was great too. He was really excellent as like kind of the heart of the film. All the foster kids were played really well, even though I have some issues with some of their characters, which we'll get into soon. The parents were played very well, the foster parents that is, and I thought that the villain, even though not a big fan, Mark Strong always does just a great job in his roles. I just wish he had a bit more to do. I also want to mention Donald Glover, who played the villain's dad, Dr. Sivana's father, and he was in it in the beginning flashback scenes and a little bit in the later part of the film, and I always love him. He was amazing as Lionel Luthor in Smallville, and this is a very similar role, playing the main villain's father, because he was playing Lex Luthor's father in the show, and of course he did a great job. I would have loved to see more, even though it wasn't really part of the story. It shouldn't have been more. He always just tears up the scenes that he's in and just really stands out, so that was really awesome to see him in a role, because I didn't expect to see him in this film. Overall, the acting all across the board, great job. The casting, the process for casting must have been amazing, and it took him such a long time to find all these perfect actors for these respective roles, although I have some problems with the character development. I'll start with the villain, which is probably the biggest flaw of the film, and Dr. Sivana has a lot of potential, especially how the film starts off with him. It doesn't start off with Billy Batson, but shows like that all the troubled childhood he had, and his denial from being Shazam, and all of this, and it was just a great setup. But unfortunately, they didn't do much with that. Basically, he has a rough childhood, and now he wants power. They don't explain what he's going to do with that power. He wants power because, well, he's never had a child, and he wants to get it because just to feel powerful, I guess, and take revenge on his father, which he does early on in the film. So it makes no sense why he's keeps on so insistent on getting the chosen one, who's Shazam, getting his powers for himself. Because what is he going to do with the powers? He never explains that. I think that's a big, big flaw of the film right there, that the villain lacks the character development, and he doesn't really, like, change throughout the course of the film. I feel like he lacks like a very defining characteristics, and he's not particularly memorable, even though he has a really cool aesthetic and is very well acted. So this villain is just going to be forgotten like many of the Phase 1 Marvel Studios villains, unfortunately. And then in terms of lead characters, I thought both Billy Batson / Shazam and Freddy were really, really well executed in terms of their character development. They changed throughout the film, and they're very, very well fleshed out. That was awesome. I thought the Foster family, I have a little bit of problems with them, the rest of the Foster family that is, and that even though the characters were very likable, they felt a little cliche in terms of they're like the perfect family. Like, it lacked the nuance that I thought it should have had. Like, it didn't feel as realistic as it could have been, and how like the parents were like the perfect foster parents for Billy. And I didn't like how I felt like each of the kids had like that one defined characteristic, and that was what set them apart. Because even though they were like likable characters and they had many funny lines, I do not like when characters just become caricatures and just have one trait, because then it becomes very just like listing the different characters, like, oh, this is the foster child with this is the foster child with this. And I thought that the film ran into that problem, and I would have almost liked to see them just not have those characters if that's what they're going to do with them. The foster parents were nice, and I thought they did have a good role in the film, even though I thought they were too like cliched perfect. And my final gripe with character development is with the two bullies in the film. I thought they were straight out of 1985, and I thought they lacked relevancy with like current times and current bullying, where exclusion and cyberbullying are probably the most prominent types, and it just made this feel very old-fashioned and cliched in that regards, and it just didn't really have the same emotional impact, because it felt kind of very just cheesy and caricature-y, and like, it works in Stranger Things when the show takes place in the 80s, but when it takes place in 2019, you gotta think of better ways to have bullies. Like, just watch 8th Grade, which is a great depiction of current childhood in like the 2010s, and the way the bullies are shown there, it's a lot more nuanced, and I love that about that film, because they're not straight out bullies like in this one, and I really wish they had changed it a little bit. Maybe it was the tone they were going for in the film, but either way, the bullies were poorly established. Overall, I'm giving this category a 4 out of 5 because of the phenomenal acting and the main character's great development, though the villain particularly was lacking, and some of the secondary characters were a little bit too. And my final category consists of the story elements, plot, pacing, script, and theme. I found the plot of Shazam to be a fairly basic superhero origin story, and I think that was in a good way, because this film is very light in most regards, and it feels like it should be an origin story, and I thought it was handled very well. Like, it's very similar in some ways to the first phase of the MCU, but I think it differentiates itself enough to be its own film, and I thought the plot was pretty solid. Like, I preferred a lot over Captain Marvel's plot, which I felt was more standard Phase 1 material, but also had more issues than this one. While I feel like in Shazam, it set up a very solid exposition, and at showing the villain and the lead hero and their contrast in their lives, it really set up the characters well in that regards. Unfortunately, it didn't expand on the villain like I previously mentioned, and yes, I thought sometimes it would get a little bit tedious in some regards of like just retreading and many all's lost moments. It felt like it just felt like there was repeatedly being some really bad circumstances, and somebody drops the ball, or like Billy Batson like makes a mistake, or Shazam makes a mistake, and that's more of a pacing issue than a plot issue, because I thought overall the plot was pretty solid. Yeah, the ending was kind of predictable, but it was kind of an interesting twist. I'm not going to spoil it here, but the thing they did in it was a little bit different than what I was expecting. I wouldn't call it a full-fledged twist, necessarily, but it was definitely a little bit surprising, even though most of the film, I would say, in the plot regards, is not a surprising one at all. It's all pretty standard fare, but it's an enjoyable ride, and I think that's fine. The plot serves the movie, like the type of movie it's trying to be, in the tone, very well, and just being kind of like this dramedy superhero style film that also has a lot of coming of age aspects to it that I like a lot. And so, yeah, I mentioned already, the pacing isn't the best. I felt like the movie went by very fast for 2 hours and 12 minutes, which is great. I was shocked when I saw the runtime after I saw the film, but I did find that it would get a little bit repetitive at some points during the movie. And the script, I thought, was very hit or miss sometimes. The jokes, I would say, usually hit, and when they hit, they would hit so hard. They'd be hilarious, had me laughing out loud, which I find often, like, I'll do a little chuckle, or I found a joke kind of funny, but there were some jokes in this movie where I was legitimately laughing like crazy, and I thought that was awesome, because I don't get that super often, especially in superhero movies. That remind me of like Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor Ragnarok, which made me really happy, but unfortunately it doesn't have the consistency of those movies with the jokes department, particularly in the first act, where I felt like the jokes were a lot weaker and kind of mediocre. I wouldn't say any of them were flat out bad or cringy, but they were just kind of mediocre jokes that are like, eh. like, you're trying, but it's not, like, a great job. But then they improved throughout the film, which was great. And by the end, I would say almost all the jokes were hitting, which made me very happy. There was a lot of great physical gags along with humor. And I thought it was fun references to Batman and Superman. Like, these guys. And I thought that was really cool to see a different vantage point in the DC extended universe of, like, these kids who look up to these superheroes and, like, have all these collectibles of them and, like, read about them in the news and stuff. Kind of like superheroes in our culture, where even though they don't exist in our world, that, like, people read their comics, they have so many collectibles of them in real life too, which I thought was cool. And I thought the script, though, some of the dramatic moments, it did falter a bit into bad melodrama that was very cheesy, and there was definitely a bit of cheesiness in this film. I'm not sure if it was intentional. Same thing as Aquaman. I thought Aquaman was a little bit more intentional in the cheesiness, but this one had some camp to it. But sometimes it didn't feel like should have been there, because this had a lot of legitimate heart and legitimate drama to it at certain points when they just had some more realistic dialogue and let the actors shine. But sometimes it felt very canned and generic movie melodrama, and that was unfortunate because there was just such a drastic difference from some of these dramatic scenes to some of the other ones in the film. So that led me to believe that no, it is not intention to be a melodrama or to be very cheesy and campy, but it's just a mistake that's made a little bit, and I thought that was very unfortunate because there's so much potential here for a truly spectacular film. And in many ways, it's great. It's really excellent and definitely offers a little bit of a different type of superhero movie, and now it's a kid transforming into an adult. It's big mixed with a superhero movie, and I thought that was really cool. But unfortunately, the script, I think, often holds it back in terms of some of the jokes not working very well, or there being some bad melodrama, and just some cheesy lines in general. And I talked about earlier about some of the cliches with the shots and some of the characters, particularly with the bullies. And that leads me finally to theme. Of course, there's the more cliched, obvious theme and how Billy Batson needs family, and he can't just work on his own, and he does grow as a character a lot with that. It is a little bit hit you over the head, but it's a sweet theme nevertheless. But one that I did think was great and a better theme that was more subtle was about how people aren't perfect, and you have to accept that, and that, yes, Billy Batson was chosen, and he's not a perfect person, of course. Obviously he's not. You see many bad actions he does, but he grows as a person. He has a great heart deep inside of him, and he has a fight. He wants to help other people, which is seen in, like, this trailer shot where he fights the bullies that are hurting Freddy. I thought that was great to show that you don't need to be a perfect person in order to be a superhero. And that was just a great message that I really, really liked. I love when movies have more subtle messages, and often those are the better ones, and the more obvious one that was, like, the more predictable one. Like, I went into the movie thinking that it would be about family, and yes, that was the main message, but the smaller message I thought was the better one and really left me more impacted. Yes, it had issues with a little bit with the pacing particularly, and the plot was a little generic, even though I think it fit the movie. Overall, this category, I'll be giving a 3 out of 5. It is definitely the weakest category of the film, and it's the most important, unfortunately, primarily because the script is very hit or miss, and the pacing. But overall, I think this movie is very fun. It's an enjoyable watch. It definitely leaves you with some very heartfelt moments that I really did enjoy. It leaves you impacted. Maybe it's not the most memorable superhero film, but it's a great one. I thought, unfortunately, it did have the potential to be the next Guardians of the Galaxy if it was maybe in better hands like James Gunn. It's not, but it's still a very solid film and definitely one of the best DC Extended Universe films. So I'd highly recommend you guys go out and see it. I'm giving Shazam a 3.75 out of 5. I'd love to hear your opinions in the comment section down below. Make sure to like and subscribe for more awesome movie reviews, rankings, other film-related videos at Film Frenzy. I'll see you guys later. Bye.